Can't do it.
Okay.
We'll do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live. It. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Thing sucks.
And with that, we welcome you in. It's another edition. We're back from vacation. It's the Daily Puck Drop, Monday, December 2nd, broadcasting from the Limbach Lumber Studios. Contractors, they've got free deliveries, everything from whole house packages to homeowner DIY projects, the largest stock moldings in the Northwest. That has not changed in the week we've been gone. Old school service, they've been doing it since 1930. Give Limbach Lumber a call, 206-782-3487. Visit them online at limbachlumber.com. Follow on all these social media platforms, Puck Sports on X and Instagram, also on Blue Sky there as well, if you've made that move. Puck_sports on TikTok, and Facebook is at Puck Sports. Also, sign up and join the Puck's Posse community membership. The QR code there on your screen. If you're watching the video stream, we'll take you right there. Also, just up at pucksports.com. Benefits include exclusive content, live chats, and, of course, supporting the continuation there of pucksports.com. Jim Moore joins us, the go-to guy every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Brought to you by
Bright Owl Lighting. You can decorate your house, Christmas lights, your house, your residence, your business, full service, design, install, maintain. They'll put them up and take them down and safely store them for next year. Don't risk your, hey Puck, don't risk your life anymore.
I'm not risking my life. He's coming out this week.
He's coming out this week. Brian Turner with his crew there, brightowllighting.com. I mean, you don't want to get up on those wobbly ladders, the slippery roofs, so let the professionals handle it. Call Bright Owl Lighting at 360-675-2034. That's 360-675-2034 for a free estimate, or visit brightowllighting.com. Remember, this service is only available in Island, Skagit, Whatcom, and Snohomish counties. But we're going to get a firsthand report from Jason Puckett to see how Brian Turner's Bright Owl service, because he's coming down to Ballard. He's doing you a special favor, isn't he?
How long do you think? And I appreciate that that Brian's doing that, and I appreciate you. You've set this whole thing up, and I can't wait to have Brian come down this week to put up the Christmas lights. We've discussed this before. I'm an idiot when it comes to that. I don't like doing it, and so if somebody else is going to do it for me, that's you know what? Great. Thumbs up. Great.
Well, wait a minute. I just read that the service is only available in Island, Skagit, Whatcom, and Snohomish counties.
He's making an exception. I don't know. The county that you pay too much in taxes.
Okay.
That's the county. He's making an exception. Now I wonder where he's coming from. He's coming, from way up north. How long does it take him to get into Ballard? Now the one thing, probably not too long when he's on the freeway. It's once you get off the freeway, trying to get into Bel Air. It takes a while.
I think he's coming from Stanwood.
That's a trip. Well, thank you, Brian. Thank you, listeners. It's we've been off for a week. I'm sure everyone missed us, clamoring for us to get back on. How was your Thanksgiving, Jim? Did you have a wonderful time with the family?
Oh, it was fantastic. Yeah, we had Kathy's niece's family over, and the ex-husband of the niece. So that was kind of interesting. And
hold on, back up. Your niece who lives in Bend, right?
Yeah, and she has 3 kids.
She has 3 kids. She comes over along with the divorced husband. How long have we been divorced here?
Oh, only about a month.
A month. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fresh.
They worked out a deal though that for holidays that they would celebrate them together, which I think is cool, for the kids' sake. So
it's a mature response.
Yeah. So there weren't any fireworks or anything.
No one got hopped up on some wine and started saying, "Well, this is why I left you," and this is why I left. The nagging.
No. Everyone was a grown adult, including me. Yeah, and the kids were here. Mikey and Stevie were here, so had a great week. They introduced me to disc golf.
Oh, really? You never
now
played
I'm an
disc
addict.
golf before?
I'm going to go out and buy a couple of Frisbees and try and get better at it. It's fun. I've never done it before.
Fun as hell. There's a great disc golf course in Pullman, right up by the Hilltop Inn. There's a park
Sunnyside
up there.
Park, right?
Yep. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Played there all the time.
Stevie's been going there, and I really enjoyed it. You know, you can get the dogs out there too, and it doesn't take as long as golf. It was fun. Had a good week. How about you?
It's good. It's good to just kind of recharge the batteries, get away, just kind of kick the feet up a little bit, spend some time with family. So it was good. It was awesome. We had just a good time getting away.
Yeah.
So,
well,
nice.
That's good. You know, what I appreciated about not being on the show last week, or you having a show at all, was not having to talk about the loss in Corvallis. And is there any way we can get around talking about the loss in Pullman this week?
Okay, so I've decided I don't know what strategy to go in here. Because there's a lot of people that want to tune in. They don't care. You know, there's a percentage that don't care about the Cougs. But they want
a large percentage, probably.
Well,
even us Cougs don't anymore.
So now I'm just trying to think, do we go right into the Seahawks? You want to go into the Seahawks or into the Cougs? Obviously, we'll talk about the Cougs. We'll have our end of the season. I can't wait for that one tomorrow. The last Old Crimson, or at least regularly scheduled Old Crimson that we'll do tomorrow. That's going to have a lot of fireworks to it. They did break the breaking news today, just came down about probably 15 minutes ago. Jeff Schmedding has been fired as the defensive coordinator. Again, that was zero surprise that he was going to be removed.
You were the first one who called for that, though, so I think you should give yourself some. Well, I don't know. Can you give yourself credit for someone
having
getting
an
fired?
opinion?
No, you were the first one who called for it, though, and I thought, God, that's kind of going out a little bit on that. But
and no one likes doing this. I mean, when you were writing columns back in the day, did you like doing that?
No, I can't remember if I ever called for anyone to be fired, though.
Yeah.
But it seemed justified, didn't it?
Well, yeah, and I think the one issue I would have with how Jake handled it was, I understand he is very, very loyal individual, and probably you could argue loyal to a fault with him. That is his whole upbringing. That's the way he came up. It's just it's who he is. He's going to be loyal. I understand his rationale. Maybe I would disagree with it, but I understand his rationale of wanting to keep Jeff Schmedding on throughout the whole season. And I know a lot of Coug fans took great issue when he said, hey, we're going to finish what we started, then we'll address it at the end of the season. When he said that, I think most everybody knew he was done. But I think the way that Jake handles himself is he's not going to sit there, because it's not just one person's fault of how they've performed. You know, ultimately it's on him as well. And I think he was going to say, I'm not going to embarrass this guy during the season. I'll do it after the season, and then we'll make the move then. The one issue I would take with him would be, at the moment you knew the defense wasn't playing well, and really that was from the get-go. From the get-go, Portland State, I think we can go back and listen to past shows. I had concerns immediately about how bad they were. Once he saw that they weren't playing well, he should have taken over the play calling duties immediately. He's a defensive coordinator. He should have done it. And I think if he looks back, I think that's the one regret he's going to have.
Yeah, it's just, I just go back to, I'm sure Jeff Schmedding was hired for a reason, and it just didn't work out. And I always wonder about how much talent he had to deal with. And I suppose, you can talk to me about Gusta and, several other players that we had that were above average type players. But that was a contributing factor for sure too, is the lack of talent that they had on that side of the ball. So,
yeah.
But yeah, would he still have his job if we'd beaten Wyoming and kept him out of the end zone on that last drive? Because we only gave up 3 field goals to that point.
Well, yeah, listen, I think it was a scramble hire for him. He had to get him, hired, and because of when Brian Ward left and all that. Listen, they didn't have a lot of talent. Okay, that's part of it. There's not a lot of talent on that defense. There just isn't, minus Gusta. Inbu, I think, is a good player too as well, but minus they just don't have a lot, and it's hard. It's you got to have talent. You just do. Thanks. Flip it over to just the Seahawks. We'll get back into the Cougs, but look at the Seahawks yesterday, and the defense. They got a lot of talent on that defense. They got a lot of talent on that team. It was a matter of time probably before that defense was going to start playing better. And, I think the biggest guy, the biggest determining factor in the way the Seahawks win yesterday is because they have a freak, defensive lineman who's playing unreal right now in Leonard Williams, who has answered a lot of question marks, really, of because I don't know. I didn't think he played all that well last year. I don't think he was a dominating force. They end up giving him a contract and all that, and he has balled out this year, Jim. He just has, and that was about as drunk of a football game I have ever seen. Was that Seahawks game yesterday?
No, it was crazy though, because that Leonard Williams play. I mean, you're right. I mean, I think he was a solid player, but you wondered if he would justify the contract that they gave him, and they had to give him that contract for what they traded to get him. And so now they parlayed that into like, boy, he looks like one of the best defensive linemen in the league, at least in November and through December 1st yesterday. And talk about momentum changing, game changing plays, because that game would have been over if they had scored there. Now, even if they hadn't gotten a touchdown, they would have been up 17 with a field goal, and you're probably not going to come back from that. But that was a 14-point swing there, or a 10-point swing anyway, and pretty cool. It's always cool though. I mean, you always see cornerbacks and safeties and guys like that returning pick sixes, but to see a guy like that, and he was fast. I mean, that guy. I mean, I saw him on the postgame show on the Sunday night thing with that Sylvie does on Channel 5, and that Wyman guy, and Wyman's kind of a big guy, but Leonard Williams standing next to him, I mean, made Wyman look like a midget, So I mean, he's just, to see him lumbering down that left sideline, and he had all those blockers in front of him, and it was just a special moment for that defense. Talk about a signature play for that defense that's been playing well the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, playing great. I mean, it's the kind, it was weird watching those, what happened, with the Cougs, and we'll get back into the Cougs in a second, and then watching the Seahawks is how I view.
We have to.
Yeah, but we have to. How I view both teams. Because I'm watching the game Saturday, and I just know. I just know they're going to lose.
Yeah.
It's an awful, awful feeling. I just know when they don't, when he fumbles at the end of the half and they go down and get a field goal, I was just like, this is it. I just know what's going to happen in the second half. They're a terrible third quarter team. And then when they get into the end of the third quarter, when they get those two turnovers, the back-to-back fumbles, and don't convert on those.
3 and out after the turnovers.
And I'm just like, this is awful. They can't put them away. And when Wyoming got the ball with 3 minutes to play, they had to go 90 yards to score. Despite them not doing anything all day, anything, I knew in the pit of my big fat-ass stomach, I knew they were going to go down and score and win. I just knew. And I think 99% of Cougar fans said, yeah. But then I contrast that to the Seahawks. And it's just the years of watching them. Despite them being down by 14, I just thought they're going to come back and win the game. I really did. I just thought they're going to win it. They're a better football team. When they were down 21-16, I'm like, they are a better football team than the Jets. And they're just we have gifted the Jets how many points now? I mean, all of them, just based on stupid turnovers and special teams, because we have two dumbasses back there that can't feel the ball. They're just dropping.
I don't think it Lockett back there.
I don't know, but they need to
Lockett
get somebody else back there.
Get rid of those other guys. I mean, D. Williams can't go back there next game, can he?
No. Williams can't go back there. Laviska Shenault can't go back there. They cannot go back there anymore. They can't. I know everyone wants to fire Jay Harbaugh today, but I'm just trying to
No, they've been good. They've been good most of the year, though.
Did Jay Harbaugh cause them to drop the ball?
No.
I mean, no. So, and I think there was a moment in the game yesterday, too, where I think JSN, looked to the staff and said, put me in. There's a moment, if you go back and watch the game, where I think he says to the coaching staff, I'll do it next time. Put him back there. Put somebody else back there. But when they were down 21-16, I just felt, I was just confident they would come back and win. Like when the Jets got the ball and they're driving down, I just thought, you know what? I think this defense is going to make a play. They've been playing great. So it's just, that's the life of being a Cougar fan and a Seahawks fan. I'm zero confidence in one team and then the utmost confidence in the other.
See, if that was the Jets going against the Cougar defense, you would have hoped the Jets would score in a hurry so we'd still have time left.
Yeah. I mean, I just knew it. And then even when it was 4th and 14, I'm like,
You thought they were going to score on 4th and 14?
Yes, I just had the absolute worst feeling in the pit of my stomach. Just because remember earlier in that drive, it was 1st and 25 after
and they picked it up in one play.
And one play is right down the seam, and I'm like, and they got Nigel Burton's on there. It's like, I don't know what Nigel Burton's like. I don't know what they're trying to do defensively right now. They don't know what they're doing, and I'm like, oh my God, yeah, it's just, yeah.
God, and our offense suddenly sucks too. So I don't think I've ever been less excited for a Cougar Bowl game than this one. Have you?
Do you know where they're projected to go, by the way?
Is it Las Vegas?
Holiday Bowl.
Still?
Yeah, Holiday Bowl. Projected to go to the Holiday Bowl.
Against who?
Either Clemson or Syracuse.
Okay.
You get me more excited if it's the Holiday Bowl. I'll tell you that because you know my love affair for San Diego. It's the greatest city in the world. So
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, it's just an epic collapse, man. Just a God Almighty.
I like the way you say we'll get back to the Cougs in a minute, and then it takes you about 10 seconds to get back to the Cougs.
Well, I'm just kind of
the Seahawks. It's a much better story. Everyone's happy about what happened yesterday back in New York.
Well, but there is stuff with the Seahawks game. That's why yesterday's Seahawks game really in a weird way. And we'll do more of a deep dive with the Seahawks coming up at 11 with Curtis Crabtree and Tim Booth with the Ground Puck podcast.
Well, what are we doing here? A shallow dive?
We're doing a shallow. I don't know. Yeah. But the Seahawks game was perfect yesterday because they won, but there's a lot to nitpick from the game. I mean, people want Harbaugh fired. People want Ryan Grubb fired. It's great. They won. They're in first place, and people still aren't happy. That's the greatest thing in the world for sports media.
Yeah, you look at a lot of factors awesome. Even going into that game where I know they've been playing better at 10 o'clock, but still a cross-country trip. And the point spread, when you looked at it, the Jets were favored in the game.
Yeah.
It was one of those, you know how I like the gambling perspective on it,
sure.
A sandwich game. I mean, you go back there, you're playing the Jets, you're thinking, oh, God, the lowly Jets, what were they, 3-8 or something? And so you probably are going to handle it with your B game. Well, you did. You handled it with your, you beat them with your C- game, didn't you? I mean, you didn't have to have your A game to beat the Jets yesterday.
No,
you
were just
a better team. But you played Arizona last week. You played San Francisco the week before that. And then you got Arizona next week. It was a classic game where let down spot, all that stuff. I would have bet on the Jets yesterday, not the Seahawks. I didn't bet on the game because my account's kind of low. Because I thought the Cougs would not only win but cover the 18.
Here's what I want you to do. You know, we're either going to get, who are we going to get on this? Either you come up with it, or we'll ask our researcher, our gambling researcher. Because he's good at researching Ben Fox this question. Maybe even Troy's got it. I don't know. But Ben Fox feels like he'd like more of the like the analysis, like the analytic numbers of it, the research of it. Is there another team in the history of college football that was double-digit favorites in 3 straight games and lost every single game? I would say there's no chance that's ever happened in college football.
I would say you're right, because typically if you're a double-digit favorite and you lose the first one, you're likely not going to be a double-digit favorite in the next one. And in the case you are, and if you lose that game, there's no way in hell you're going to be a double-digit favorite in the third one.
Right, exactly.
God, I know, we got to get back to the Seahawks.
No, we can bounce around. We can go Seahawks,
God,
Cougs,
it was just
Cougs, Seahawks.
The whole thing was
shotgun.
horseshit.
It's a beer and then a shot. Beer and then a shot.
We knew the whole thing was going to be horseshit from the get-go because no one was going to that game. I mean, it looked like a high school game, between Ballard and name your other.
It was awful.
Your Metro team.
Sure.
It looked like Memorial Stadium.
Nathan Hale.
It looked like a Memorial Stadium turnout.
It was terrible. It was awful.
God.
It was awful.
And you and I are to blame in part because we didn't go.
No,
I mean,
right.
And then Mikey and Stevie, they drove all the way from Bend, like 6 or 7 hours to get there, and they left at halftime.
Now, why did they leave at halftime? I mean,
just
because
the game was just so blah.
And they drove home?
The game just seem blah?
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, everything would have changed, and they would have won the game had they scored at the end of the half. The game would have been over.
But even if we had won and
21 to
Wyoming
20.
didn't score, I mean, how would you have felt coming out of that? Well, I guess we won.
I'm just saying they score there. It's 21-3. They'll win. But that changed everything. I mean, that fumble and them going down and it's just.
I have never, all the years of following Cougar football, I've never seen so many angry and upset people.
Wow. Vitriol.
Than after this one.
I mean, there's how much do you think, honestly, the percentage of the fan base wants Jake Dickert fired?
Well, you can't really measure it by what you see on Twitter, but
that's not everything, right? And that's how I'm measuring it. I'm
but
measuring
on
it on
Twitter,
social
if you measure it, it's more than 50%. I'm not in that crowd. I don't think you are either.
I am not. No, I am not on the firing of Jake Dickert. No.
But I just wonder, that transfer portal opens next Monday.
Yeah,
are we going to have
9th.
kids entering that portal before the bowl game?
Well, yeah, you will. I mean,
will we hear about it?
Yeah, I think you're going to know right away. I mean, and the biggest one will be John Mateer. Whether or not John Mateer will go into the portal.
Well, did you hear him post game though? He sounds like he wants to atone for. He felt really bad about not coming through on senior night and wants to atone for that in the bowl game and make sure that the seniors go out on a good note. So he sounded for all the world like he's going to play, and then at the same time, skeptical me is thinking, yeah, but
kind of what you say.
If Oregon calls him and says, "Hey, we'll give you $1.5 million, but we don't want you playing in the bowl game,"
that's when the 400-word Twitter post comes. Greatest place in the world. I'll be a Coug forever. I grew up here. Miss Huddy's, best barbecue I've ever had. Ron, thanks for the truck. With that being said, I'll be entering the transfer portal.
God, can you imagine if he goes to Oregon? I mean,
I don't want him to go anywhere, man. I want him to be in Pullman next season.
Are you still thinking he'll be there? I mean, after the way that season ended, it made me feel like less and less that Mateer is going to be a Cougar.
All right, you know what? We'll save it, and you know what? And we'll play it back when I'm wrong, if I'm wrong. I think he's an extremely loyal individual. I think he'll be back.
Okay.
And I'm not just saying that's wishful thinking. I honestly believe that. I really do. I think in my heart, I honestly believe that.
I want to believe you, and yet at the same time, I also want to make a $100 bet with you that you're wrong.
No, I don't want to bet on.
But I don't want to be right about that. I don't want to
right.
pocket $100 and have Mateer playing for the damn Ducks next.
Do you think? It'd make your wife happy because she's a Ducks fan. She gets a double dip. She gets to root for him now with the Cougs, and then she get a double dip with him with the Ducks. Do you think more people, based on social media, and you're right, because social media is not everything, and Twitter's not everything, and I'm basing my opinion on, God, everybody wants Dickert fired on social media posts, and that's stupid, and I know better than that. But based on Twitter, do more Cougar fans want Dickert fired, or do more Seahawks fans want Ryan Grubb fired? What do you think?
Oh, more Cougar fans want Dickert fired.
Are we sure about that?
Well, no, I'm not sure about that. I'm not looking at Seahawks Twitter as much as I am, Cougs Twitter. But what did Ryan Grubb?
There's a lot of people
that want him fired game yesterday.
Now.
Has he had a bad season? I mean, think about it for just for a second and try and think clearly and objectively on this.
It's hard.
Ryan Grubb had one of the best college football offenses ever last year. Okay,
Sure did.
And he had. We've talked about the offensive line that he had there. It was the best offensive line in the country. They won that award.
You can do a lot of stuff with a good.
Then he goes to this bullshit offensive line with the Seahawks. Imagine being an offensive coordinator trying to call plays, thinking, yeah, okay, I want to run the ball, but man, so-and-so can't block, and neither can so-and-so over there. And that guy at the center, we lost our center. I don't know what's going on with him, but now we're back to Olu. And then let's try this 6th-round draft choice and see how he does this week. And so I give him all kinds of slack on that. I don't think Ryan Grubb, it's not his fault that the team isn't moving the ball consistently. I don't think. Although, there'd be a lot of people that say, well, you should have called this, should have called that. Honest to God, I always go back to thinking they're calling plays that they think will work based on based based on all the damn research they've done all week long. And then we sit here with our cocktails, watching these games going, God, what a dumb fuck for calling
No, what
that.
I would have done. And then you got all 22 guy. Oh, they were in a cover 2 there. They should have done this. Like that some jackass in his basement knows exactly what they're going to call on what to play. Okay, so Grubb
Sounds like down on the goal line, he should have done different, some different stuff.
Okay, sure. And I think that's fair. You look at the goal line situation, all right? Now, I think it's okay, not knowing exactly what he truly intended. I would say the first play where he throws the lob fade to DK, I would just say this. You just got done with your thoroughbred wide receiver having to run 40-plus yards downfield. He's tired. Maybe don't throw him the ball. That would be my only criticism. And he's got Sauce Gardner on him. But okay, so whatever. It brings up second down. I mean, I went back and looked at it again this morning. Everyone criticizes him for not running the ball more. Well, he gives second down. He gives the ball up to Walker. Goes right up the middle. He doesn't get much. He gets a few yards. That's it. But he can't again rely on calling short yardage runs because these guys can't run block. They just can't. Third down. Are you mad on the third down play? He throws it to DK again. You assume they're going to throw the ball there, right? Well, he throws it to the best player on the team, and he gets a PI. Well, that worked out well, so now it's first and goal again. What do you do on first and goal? Walker's in there again. He gets the ball up the middle. Nothing. Okay, is that Grubb's fault? I'm just kidding. Is that second down? Second down, he runs a Walker's in there again. He runs a play action to Walker. They all bite. Is it Fant? Fant's wide open. Is it Ryan Grubb's fault that Geno Smith made a bad throw? No, that's not Ryan Grubb's fault. That was a perfectly called play. That was a bad throw by Geno. In fact, you could go back to the play that set him up in first and goal, the long pass to DK. That was an underthrown ball by Geno Smith. That should have been a touchdown. Should it have not? I mean, I think we're not all Hugh Millen over here, offensive coordinators, but that should have been a touchdown. All right, so that brings up third down, right? Now, the third down play, I think it's fair to probably say, what were you doing there on third down? Remember, they take Walker off the field, they hand it to Charbonnet, and he loves Zach Charbonnet, by the way. Like, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but later in the game, they hand it to Charbonnet, and he scores.
And he scores, right, exactly. So he gets stuffed, but then they're offside. So they replay third down again. So then on the third down play, he runs the slant to DK, and it's broken up by Sauce Gardner. Now, at that point, did you see the video by any chance? The cutaway to Mike McDonald on the sideline?
No. Oh, wait, he said, I did. He said,
why did we throw the ball there?
Why are we throwing that?
Why are we throwing the ball there? He clearly said it. And even River or Sky understands that wasn't a good call. And then, and then the fourth down play, which was, probably not a good play call. I mean, a sprint left. I mean, I guess if you're going to roll out left, maybe keep rolling left and throw it away. You're not Lamar Jackson. You can't circle back.
Yeah. Well, okay, you can second guess the guy a little bit, but just don't third guess him. And keep in mind too that it's his first year in the NFL. I can't believe I'm making excuses for this, guy that was hell on wheels last year with the Huskies, but I am.
Well, he's a good coordinator, but it does take all the moving parts to be good. You do need a functional offensive line that can be good and run the ball. And one thing that they're better at pass blocking. They're okay at that. And I thought the young guy who made the start at right guard was good. Was it Laumea?
Yeah.
When I pronounce his name, Laumea making the start at right guard. I think he was good for the most part. Yeah. You got Oluwatimi, a second-year player. Abe Lucas now. What are we on our third game back with him?
And what's Olu? That's just his second start since Williams abruptly retired.
Correct. So.
Yeah, and then if he hadn't thrown to DK in any of those plays, it'd be like, why wouldn't you throw to DK?
Right.
So.
But then you're right about when it gets back to later in the game on the game-winning touchdown, right? where they run that same little formation where they bring Walker in motion. And I even made the comment before, if they had given the ball to Charbonnet before, I'm like, is Charbonnet Grubb's kid that we just don't know about? Because he really does like giving him the ball a lot in some like pretty pivotal situations. Yeah. And then what happens right after that? He gives it to him again, he scores a touchdown. Now, no one on Twitter is praising Ryan Grubb for that play call. No one's saying, oh, that was a great play call. You thought Walker was going to get the ball. Laumea destroys his man, and Charbonnet scoots into the end zone. But no one praises him for that. No one acknowledges
it's just when things go poorly. Yeah. It's just, you only get noticed. The offensive line only gets noticed when they miss a block.
Of course.
Yeah. And then you give credit to Charbonnet and whoever opened the hole for him.
Right. And then I think if we're bouncing back and forth, remember we're doing beer, shot. Seahawks are the beer, Cougs are the shot, because we need shots for the Cougs to talk about them. Yeah, if you go back to Schmedding and just their defensive staff, you just have to look at who they have on there. I mean, again, he should have been removed a long time ago. I don't even know if Jake Dickert takes over the play calling duties. Does it get much better? Who knows? I mean, the last few weeks, he had apparently been more involved in the defensive play calling, and that would even go back to the Oregon State game, and that was their worst defensive performance of the season. They were terrible in that game to an offense that did nothing. So, but you have to have playmakers. They have lost in the last 2 years, and I know I'm saying the obvious. They've lost a lot in the last 2 years in terms of playmakers. Ron Stone, Brennan Jackson. A couple of years ago, Deion Henley is playing his ass off for the Chargers now. Jaden Hicks making plays for the Chiefs. Jalen Watson making plays for the Chiefs before he got injured. Shaw Smith-Wade, before he tapped out last season, makes his first interception yesterday for Carolina. They had dudes everywhere. They had NFL players. They don't have, other than Gusta right now, any NFL players. They're linebacker. I love Kyle Thornton. Love him to death. But Kyle Thornton's not a difference maker at the middle linebacker position. Just isn't. It's like with Dotson and Baker. Those guys weren't difference makers. That's why they made the move. They got rid of them, and they brought in Ernest Jones. And if this keeps up, and everybody, including you and me, have been critical of John Schneider, this may go down if he continues to play this way. It's one of the greatest in-season trades, minus Marshawn Lynch, that he has ever made.
Well, yeah, and I think Condotta wrote about that this week, talking about it and what a difference Ernest Jones has made. But, that's the thing. I think the reason so many, going back to the Cougs again, toggling back and forth, I think that's what really hit home after that game was not just the looking at this season and what had happened against Wyoming, but for me and maybe other Cougar fans, maybe you too, Puck, it just made me wonder about the future of Cougar football too.
Sure.
We've seen the best of what Cougar football could be, and it's in the rearview mirror. And now we're going to be looking. We were fortunate not to have an exodus of players leaving last year in the transfer portal, and now I think that's going to change this year because it's kind of. You look at it, if we had somehow made it into the college football playoff, I know it looks pipe dreamish now. It was pipe dreamish back then. But
sure.
If we had somehow gotten in there, then you could sell kids on like, hey, man, you can come play in Pullman and you can go all the way to the top. And now it's like, oh, man, God, you're going to be in the Mountain West. This new Pac-12 is going to be like, Mountain West Conference Light or whatever you want to call it. It's going to be similar to the Mountain West. And so, yeah, I think that was part of what we saw on Twitter too. Was like, oh my God, we're never gonna see Cougar football like it was in the past again.
But it is amazing to see how many. And again, I'm just comparing the two fan bases here for a second. I've been a little surprised of how much I have seen, despite even a win yesterday with the Seahawks. How many people still are calling for Ryan Grubb to be fired? But at the end of the year, they need to fire both Jay Harbaugh and Ryan Grubb. And I'm just like,
well,
okay.
I read where the special teams. I know that they've had, Williams has had his issues and all that, but
said 3
that
fumbles.
They've been good. They've been good until yesterday.
Didn't Myers set a record for amount of 50-yard field goals that they've had? Dixon's been consistent. Again, Jay Harbaugh has nothing to do with Laviska Shenault and Williams dropping the ball.
Yeah.
Nothing.
And
Nothing
can
to do
we
with that.
can we somehow like give every special teams coach a break for this year? I don't care if you're on the shittiest team in the league
Oh,
because of this Mickey Mouse kickoff crap that they're doing. If they do that again next year, I mean, I still, we're like, how many games into this now? I can't stand it every time I see a kickoff. And I'm so happy watching college football and seeing normal kickoffs. So, I mean, they've got to deal with this new Mickey Mouse crap going on. And so give them a break at least for 1 year. But, you know, getting back to Schmedding, yeah, you make a good point that he should have been fired, and Dickert did that today. But, I mean, you're also thinking Ben Arbuckle should go, or you're going to be happy when he goes to Oklahoma, as the rumors have it.
I'm not. Yeah, and again,
and he's certainly no boy genius anymore. Remember when he came to town? It was like, boy, he's going to be a boy wonder. But hold
on. But this is where I would also go in with personnel stuff. I think with Arbuckle, I'm not the biggest fan of that air raid offense. I am tired of it, me personally, and I want to see something different. But I will say this about Arbuckle: there are some times where he draws up some plays that I'm like, damn, that's nice. Like, he had that. I know they're all copycat, but he had a great, earlier in the season designed middle screen to Cooper Mathers against Boise State. Beautiful, just gorgeous. I think there's some things that he's done with John Mateer this year that he's been great at. I think incorporating him more into the running game. I think more zone read stuff out of the pistol. I think he should have done more of that. I think there's been some things that he's done that have been good. He is maddening that he somehow, and again, he's young. And again, I think there's some parallels here with Grubb because Grubb's going into a different system in the NFL. Better coordinators, guys that have been doing it for they've seen everything. Everything. It wasn't like Ryan Grubb was going to come in here into the NFL and show all these hardened, old school, chain-smoking defensive coordinators something they've never seen before. They've seen it all. And I think it's going to take him some time to adjust. I think for Arbuckle, what's been maddening the third quarters. I don't know what happens. They go in there, and sometimes he loses sight of what is really working for them and decides, hey, the passing game is really working right now. No one can guard Kyle Williams, but let's not get him the ball anymore. And, that's what happened in the Wyoming game. I don't even know how many targets did he get after the touchdown.
I don't know if he had any. I think I read Greg Wood's story in the Spokesman, and he only had 2 the whole game or something like that.
That is criminal. He's the best player, one of the best players on the field. Get him the ball somehow, some way, and you went away from that. And that he at times has no rhyme or reason to what he's doing. It feels like, the running game is working. Puck, he goes away from it.
Puck, you mentioned something the other night when you texted me, and I feel the same way. But Mateer's not quite right as far health wise.
He's banged up.
He doesn't. He's banged up, and he just. I was surprised when he didn't get away from that one Wyoming player on that one play where he was kind of rolling out to the left, and I thought, God, he's going to outrun that guy and get to the yellow line, and the guy caught up to him.
How about the one I think before that, the 3rd and 2, the 3rd and 3, where he's rolling out to his right? He breaks for that. I mean, that's the final drive, right? That's before they punt it back to him. They pick up that. They probably take that clock all the way down to inside a minute, even if they don't score, and he misses it by a yard. When he broke out to the right, I said, well, he's got the first down. And I know he hesitated a little bit, kind of went backwards, and some are saying you should have just keep running straight. But an earlier John Mateer gets that, and so, he.
I think we're going to find out. Yeah, maybe not until after the bowl game that we'll find out how banged up he really was, because he doesn't seem to have that electric speed that he had earlier the year.
Well, he's the entire offense.
Yeah,
he's everything. He's everything. If they didn't have him, I mean, they might be a 500 or less team. I mean, he's all of it. So, so Arbuckle, if he does go on, and I was gone, not really paying attention to much. So you inform me. What are these rumors? Is he going to Oklahoma? Is that the deal?
I saw something, from some Oklahoma website that he was rumored to be going there. And then people make the assumption that Mateer will end up going there.
Well, that's the worry, right? If Arbuckle leaves, is he a package deal with Mateer?
Yeah, but I don't know if we know that Mateer and Arbuckle are tied at the hip or not. Maybe Mateer will be happy to have a new OC. Who knows?
Wasn't there some rumor about Utah as well?
I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah, I think there's another one floating out there about Utah. But I would say this: if he does move on, I think Jake Dickert needs to. I think people. I'm going to save it for later for what the puck, but you got to understand he's a first-time head coach. He's 41 years old. Okay, this is really his third year. You want to count the year when Rolovich left and then he took over that team. Okay, we'll count it. So 3.5 years on the job. He has every year had to go through some shit. Whether it's the whole thing with Rolovich, the Jaden Delora, the NIL, the portal, the collapse of the conference. Just every year there's something new for this guy. And he's having to go through that at the same time, learn to be a head coach because he'd never done it before. He's a defensive coordinator, elevated to it, and here you go. I think he's a good head coach, and he's a good leader of the program. I think he needs to surround himself some better coordinators. I think some older coordinators too. And I don't know if that exists out there, but he needs someone who's kind of been through the fire before. Maybe even an old head coach who just got fired, but now is a coordinator, and that's kind of his role now. If he can find that and kind of have him there, I think that would be the best thing for him. If Arbuckle does move on, I would just say this. I would hope he would find someone that I think fits what he wants to do offensively a little bit more. I think he has been the air raid, let's throw it all over the place, has been kind of pressed on him because of the legacy of Washington State, right? I think that's not what he really wants to run. I think he wants to run something that has a little bit more balance to it. He needs to find someone that can run the ball more effectively because that gets him into so many holes where they just can't run the football. And
no, he's a Wisconsin guy. He grew up watching Wisconsin football. When you think Wisconsin football, you think tough, hard-nosed, physical running game. It'll probably bore the hell out of us if it ever happens. It makes sense, Puck. The game's in November in Pullman. You want to have a better running game than we've had. And you had an elite running back, Wayshawn Parker this year, that you could have used more often. But I don't know, maybe it's good. Maybe the counter to that would be like it's tougher to recruit big, brawny offensive linemen, and the 100%. Physical guys. And it's more attractive like, hey, man, come to Pullman and we're just going to air it out. And if you're a quarterback, that's appealing. And if you're a receiver, it is too. And maybe it's just easier to get those kind of guys.
Well, that's the whole thing with the air raid. The air raid is like running the triple option in high school. You run the triple option in high school because your players aren't big. You use fast, quick linemen and small little players to deceive the ball. You don't know where it's going. That's the same thing with the air raid. It's just a bunch of small, quick players. You spread it all out because you don't have big offensive linemen. You can't run the football. I get all that. I'm not saying go back, let's line up and become the I formation, 2 tight ends and run it down people's throat. I'm just saying they've got to find, if he does move on, somebody that brings some more balance to the team. I go back, if you remember Dennis Erickson and Mike Price's offenses, they threw the ball all over the place. That was a one-back spread offense that got under center, ran the ball, but still threw it all over the yard. But when they could run the ball, when they wanted to run the ball, they could. And I think they need to get to some more of that if they ever do, kind of make a transition. And again, as we're kind of bouncing back and forth between the Cougs and the Seahawks, I think for Ryan Grubb, I think people need to pump the brakes and just relax a little bit.
Well, yeah.
Okay. Some of these offensive numbers they're putting up have been really impressive. Have they gone through some ups and downs, and does it look a little wonky at times, and do they need to figure out the running game? Yeah, but that is, to me, the running game is not about what Grubb is calling. It's more about the execution of the 5 guys up front.
No, but just step back and think about it for a second. Mike McDonald, first-year head coach. Ryan Grubb, first-year offensive coordinator in the NFL. And the team is 7-5 and leading the frickin' division. It's not like I sit here and think the Seahawks are the greatest team of all. But really, that should be celebrated, shouldn't it? More so than like, oh, my God, does somebody think they'd be better than 7-5 right now if there was a different offensive coordinator? There's a chance it could be worse.
I think for them, Rob Staten and I talked about this earlier. This was kind of before they've gone through this winning streak. And, I think that, the best thing for them would be, because Rob brought up the point, hey, one worry I would have about them going 10-7, let's say winning the division, is that they would somehow say to themselves, all right, we don't have any issues. We're fine. We don't need to improve the offensive line, or we don't need to make any adjustments because clearly what we've done has worked. And I said, I understand that, but I said, you know what, Rob, I still think they'll understand that they need to fix that offensive line. It's been an issue for a decade. I think they'll address it, but we both agreed that ultimately the big picture in a first year, the best thing that could happen to them would be to win the division. Get in the playoffs, and if you go 10-7, even if you're bounced in the first round, what it does is it tells you that we made the right choice. We made the right choice in moving on from Pete Carroll. Now, that didn't look like a few weeks ago, when they're losing to the Rams, and you're thinking, God, they're going to lose to the 49ers. They're going to lose to the Cardinals. And I even said at that point, you lose those two games, you're better off just losing all of them at that point because you're out of the playoffs now, and you're not going to make it. I guess maybe some weird things can happen and they can fall apart here at the end, but it doesn't look like they're going to. But, I think for Mike McDonald, you bring up a good point. First-year head coach, a lot of new assistants, Grubb, Aiden Dirty, who is the defensive coordinator. I know McDonald's calling the plays. First-year guy as well. I think for his vision, and I think you feel comfortable where they're moving forward, you want them to win 10 games. If they get bounced out in the first round, so what? They get bounced out in the first round, they still have a lot of improvement ahead of them. But, there's no denying, right, Jim, what they've done defensively in the last three games. 17, 6, and 14. That's pretty damn good.
No, they've been great. That Arizona game, they didn't even get in the end zone.
It's awesome.
The Cardinals.
Awesome performance.
So, I just think it's really, really, it's not nitpicking with the Cougs, but with the Seahawks, it certainly is. Ryan Grubb deserves to go get through this season, and I think they'll be fine. And, I have gone, though, from thinking the Seahawks early on in the season, I'd look at the other teams in the NFC and think, well, the Seahawks could have a puncher's chance in some of these games in the playoffs if they face certain opponents. Yeah. But now you look at that NFC North, all three of those teams, Green Bay, the Vikings, Green Bay and the Vikings still have to come to Seattle to play, so we'll get a better handle on how they measure up with those two teams. And Detroit, they played pretty well against them this year. Now I know they lost, but they were in that game. But Philadelphia looks like they're class above the Seahawks right now.
They almost look like they're the best team in football right now.
But still, who knows? When you win the division, finally, we're getting away from that wild card stuff here. Win the division, you host a playoff game at least. And that gives you a heck of a lot better chance of advancing to the second round. So, I don't – it's not like I'm the biggest Seahawks fan in the world, but if I was, I'd be excited about my team right now. I'd be really excited about it and the possibilities. Boy, this is year one with this new young coach. The defense has gotten better. He made mid-season changes that are paying off. Leonard Williams is coming on. They got Witherspoon, Julian Love playing well. There's a lot of reasons to be optimistic. With the Cougs, it's like, oh, shit. We don't have as many reasons to be optimistic. Do you think – and, boy, if this was a column, if I was writing a column, usually you have transition that's kind of seamless from one paragraph to the next. This show really isn't doing that. We're just going all over the place.
Yeah, but I think there are some
Which is fine with me. Do you even think, Dickert's not going to get fired. I think we can agree on that. He's not going to get fired.
But I'll tell you this, there's not a chance he's going to get fired.
No, but do you think Dickert wants to come back? Do you think he wants to remain as coach? He's putting up with so much bullshit, and if he goes on social media and sees 17,000 people showing up for the last home game on senior night, going, you know what, I'm kind of sick of this. I want to go somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've seen a lot of that on social media where people are like, "Hey, next year when he talks again, I don't want to hear any more about the fans not showing up." But he's right about it, though.
No, he is right about it. Does he
spend too much time on it? I don't know. That's for others to decide. But
no, but when my kids took off, I was really proud of them. They left at 7 a.m. from Bend so they could get there in time for kickoff. I mean, I was really proud of him, but I was also thinking, God, Jim, why don't you get your ass in your car and drive up there
Well,
too?
you're old and you don't want to do it.
No, but when the game was over,
You're like,
what was
I'm glad I didn't.
everyone who didn't go that thought about going?
Sure.
We were all sitting there going, God, I'm glad I didn't go to that one. Driving home, imagine the Cougs. You really have to be a loyal Coug, and I think you and I are pretty loyal, but we don't even come close to some Cougs out there. Like driving through Washtenaw, heading west back to Seattle, going, what the fuck were we thinking going to that game?
Does he? I don't know. I mean, I think if he was presented an opportunity, let's just live in a hypothetical. What are the openings right now? West Virginia, North Carolina, and Purdue, right?
Oh, did they fire those guys today?
In the last couple of days, I'm just trying to think what. I think there's one more opening. I can't remember the other one. If Purdue offered him a job or West Virginia or, I think he would listen for sure. I mean, I think there's always. I mean, I know what he said on this show was saying, "Hey, listen, I got 10 more years left of me, and that's it." That doesn't necessarily mean 10 more years at Washington State. I mean, I do believe he'd love to finish his career here, but I also think it's he wants to be a coach in college football where there is a commitment from the university and a little bit more commitment from the fan base. I get that. Resources are important. And so I think that if there was another program out there that took a chance on him that had better resources than us, yeah, I think he would listen. I think he'd probably go. I mean, he's 41.
I think Purdue would be appealing to him, being in the Big Ten.
Maybe, but other than just being in the Big Ten, what is it? You would just want to get in the Big Ten and get your ass kicked every week?
Yeah, but maybe he'd be the answer to ending the ass kickings.
Maybe, but I would. If let's say he were to consider, and then I haven't seen anywhere where he's a candidate for the Purdue job, but let's just say that he was. Should he not call Jonathan Smith at Michigan State and be like, "Hey, what do you think?"
Yeah, how'd that go for you in year one?
It's terrible. It was awful. It's gone awful for him. There,
yeah,
awful. And I thought his system and the way he played football would work out well, but it just hasn't. And I think he's going to be kicking himself, is Jonathan Smith, because I think he's going to say. Well, I could have had two jobs if I would have just waited. One would have been UCLA, and the other would have been Washington. Now, I don't know if Washington would have hired him. I'm just saying that.
Oh, I think he would have been a candidate ahead of. Well, I don't know. Would he have been?
I think he would have been. I think he would have been a candidate ahead of Jed Fish. Yes, I think Washington fans would be all on board. Remember, these are Washington fans who are also Seahawks fans, most of them, who want Grubb fired, who wanted him as the head coach at Washington, by the way.
Yeah.
But I think it's easy. It's probably harder to say now because I think some of them will say, no, I always wanted Fish. I think at the moment, if you would have given the decision before the season had started, would you want Jonathan Smith or Jed Fish? I think the majority would say Jonathan Smith, but.
Oh, I think so too. Yeah, because you look at Fish's record of just jumping all over the place.
What did you think of what did you think of his decision to go with Damon Williams? I mean, that kid showed some flashes. I'll tell you that. But he showed flashes.
That was among all the disappointing things about the Cougs losing is that we couldn't really properly enjoy the Huskies just getting hammered down there in Eugene because it was like, well, wait a minute, you guys just lost to Wyoming. How can we, get excited about you guys getting pummeled by Oregon? Yeah, the decision to go with Williams, I thought it was a good decision for the most part, but I felt like he seemed like a kid that if you fell behind like they did, that it was going to be tougher for him to come back than maybe if you had
He completed two passes in the game.
Yeah.
Two. That's it. Yeah. And again, I think the mistake by him was to not start him against UCLA. Start him against the Bruins.
Get his feet wet at home against an inferior opponent.
You don't throw him into the Lions' den against the number one team in the country. I mean, that was it. And
it's kind of a slap in the face to Will Rogers, too.
I'll be stunned if he
sticks that part of it.
You think he really will stick around for the bowl game? Why would Will Rogers stick around for the bowl game? He's not going to start. They already said it. And they are. You know where they're scheduled to go, right? They'll love it. It's the worst.
Are they going to Sun Bowl?
The Sun Bowl, baby. El Paso, Texas.
Who are they slated to play?
I think either Louisville or Pittsburgh.
Oh God, that's not going to excite anybody. I really wanted to see the Huskies again in a bowl game, and people are telling me like, "Well, do you know how the bowl games work with the pairings and matchups?" I'm like, "No, I don't." But so since when are there rules in college football now? If there is a rule against that, why don't we break it and play the Huskies again?
There are no rules in college football. Hey, just a few more little weekend roundup, little tidbits before we welcome in Tim Booth and Curtis Crabtree. Talk a little bit more Seahawks. It's amazing with the. Oh, are you going to pay me now with the Geno Smith bet?
Well, I was thinking about that because I'm not sure if I've seen in my Venmo account the money from Mike Tyson. And I don't think I've seen the $25 on John Mateer to win the Heisman Trophy. So, okay. in fact, I don't want to see that money because when I lose the Geno Smith bet, then I'll only have to take it out of 125.
Okay, we'll wait then. We'll wait.
Okay,
all right. Perfect. We'll wait. We'll wait.
No, I think Sam Howell. It's not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
No,
probably not.
No.
What did you think of all the? All the outrage about the not storming the field, but planting the flag at the 50. Really, this started with Delora. Well, Baker Mayfield, I guess it really started. But of course, we know what Delora did to the Huskies years ago by planting the flag at the 50-yard line. This past weekend, Jesus, man. I've never seen a weekend of college football where players are planting flags. You got mascots, the Arizona State game, mascots getting in a fist fight. It was it was anarchy this past weekend in college football, man. It was bananas.
I'll tell you, we're in a better spot than Arizona. That coach, I think, has lost his team in year one. I mean, I know ASU has got a good team this year, but
they're already talking about turfing them.
Yeah, but to get blown out like they did on their home field in the Territorial Cup.
And hats off the old Dilly Ball. I mean, my God, what a hire that they made with Kenny Dillingham.
They're in the Big 12 title game.
They're going to be in the college football fucking playoffs, Arizona State.
He's like a kid.
He's
only 34.
Is he 34?
He's celebrating with the fans and everything.
He's playing beer. He's chugging beers after the games with the kids. I mean, it's unbelievable. He's got his shirt off probably in the locker room.
And we've always wondered why the Sun Devils couldn't be better. I mean, what there can't be an easier place to recruit to than Tempe, Arizona.
We've always wondered, right? The sleeping giant that was Arizona State. I think this guy is on the verge of unlocking that sleeping giant, man.
Yeah. Well, no, to get back to the flag planting, though, I mean, that's one of the Jaden DeLora moments that I'll never forget. That was awesome. I don't mind. I love that kind of stuff. I heard Hugh this morning talking about it, how they need to fine schools for that if that continues. And again, I love Hugh. Hugh's the best. Just absolutely love him. I always have to preface that. But he's full of shit on this one, okay? I mean, big deal. Let kids be kids, And I really wanted the Huskies, when they came over, if they wanted to try and plant the purple W on our Cougar logo, then, I like the Ohio State-Michigan, the end of the game.
Yeah, but we were terrible that year because we put all the security around it.
I know.
Terrible.
I know. It was kind of, it's fun. It adds to it. And by the way, can I just take a random shot at our former employer, KJR-FM? And
I don't know is it going to be really bad. I mean,
no, it's not really bad. It's I think scale of 1 to 10, it's like a 5.
Go ahead.
So I'm out with the dogs. I'm walking. I'm listening to the Ohio State. I'm listening to the Ohio State Michigan game, right? So could you call that one of the biggest upsets in college football history? Maybe.
Yes.
Michigan winning that game in Columbus on Saturday.
Correct.
30 seconds to go, and granted, I know that Ohio State just missed on 4th down. And so the game was technically over because Michigan could take a knee. But they just cut away and they went to the Husky honks. Their 4-hour pregame show, you mean to tell me we couldn't wait, a couple extra minutes to hear Softy go, hey, hey, if Michigan could do it, maybe Washington could do it too down in Eugene. What do you think there, Greg? Or whatever. And I'm going, wait a minute, where are you going? And they would say, well, we have all these commercial responsibilities, we paid our sponsors.
It's the flagship they've got to do.
But we missed the flag planting. We missed the Ryan Day interview. We missed Michigan, Sherrell, whatever his name is, And so I'm just like, well, what a bullshit move that was. Was that like a 5 on a 1 to 10 scale?
Fine. That was a 5. All right. On that note, we'll cut you loose. We'll do our old Crimson podcast tomorrow with Paul Sorensen. That should be fun to recap just the shit-tastic end of the season for the Cougs. All right, we'll talk to you on Wednesday. Jim Moore every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Brought to you by Bright Owl Lighting. Hook them up. Brian Turner's going to set up your lighting. You don't want to set up your Christmas lights all by yourself. All right, Jim, we'll talk to you on Wednesday.
Okay, Puck. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs. That didn't sound good, did it? It did not sound good. All right, we got to get to it now. Now I can finally stop talking about the Cougars. The Ground Puck Podcast, Curtis Crabtree, Fox 13, Tim Booth, Seattle Times. It's all brought to you by fabulous folks there at Georgetown Brewery, locally owned and operated by two diehard Huskies, Manny and Roger. They've been pouring the best local craft beer for the past 23 years, makers of Manny's Pale Ale, Bodie's Alpha IPA, hosts of your other favorite brews. Tap room open 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., 7 days a week. Visit them at georgetownbeer.com. We talk Seahawks football with Tim and Curtis. Well, that was a drunkest game I've ever seen in my life. Jesus, Tim, I've never seen anything like that when I watched on Sunday.
That was several bottles of Boone's Farm at the Coug late on a Friday night before an Apple Cup. That was that level of drunkenness when it came to describing that football game last night or yesterday.
I think after the third fumble, was it the third one when Laviscus fumbled it and then kicked it? Was that the third one?
Yes.
Yeah, Curtis, I started laughing at that. Not even mad, just laughed. I'm like, I just laughed out loud. It was so damn funny watching that.
I mean, they had a blocked extra point, 3 fumbles on special teams, and a kickoff return touchdown allowed in the first 25 minutes of the game.
Yes, sir.
It's just it's as silly a game as I can remember seeing. And this is a Seahawks team we're talking about. You know how many absolutely just unhinged games we've seen this team play through the years, and that's up at the top of the list. That game was absurd yesterday.
Yeah.
Sure.
I don't envy both of you, Tim. I don't envy you like writing a game story for that. I know you didn't. You did like kind of the notebooks or the reflections of the game.
Yeah.
But like having to write a game story to that, I don't know how I would put that one into words.
Well, it's you put it into the context of sort of how everything changed with the one play, with the Leonard Williams play. And then you kind of, in my mind, that was, that might go down as a play of the season, depending on how things, end up playing out. But you kind of encapsulate everything that happened before and then after, like the comedy of errors that was before, and then how drastically things changed for them based around that one play and how just so much kind of went their way for the most part after he makes that play and has the interception return.
Yeah, I mean, Curtis, it was that one play in particular. We'll get into that, but I think just to sit back here, right, Curtis, and on December 2nd, as they start into December, right? This is the playoff push, right? And they're 7-5. I mean, just how surprised are you that they're in this position right now after 12?
Given where we were heading into the last 49ers game,
yeah,
I didn't expect them to be 7-5 at this. In fact, I texted my buddy who lives in Phoenix, who's going to the game next week. I was like, I was not expecting you to be seeing a 7-5 football team next week when they come down there. I wasn't. Think about where they were at that time. Defense was still scuffling. They'd made a little improvement against the Rams, but the run defense had still been awful at that point. They still had no run game to go with as well. So that, there was reasons to be really pessimistic about them. And apparently Ernest Jones coming in has, one, helped the linebacker group much better and turned Leonard Williams into freaking, Warren Sapp on the defensive line, because goodness gracious, the play that guy has had over the last 2 weeks is just as good as any Seahawks defensive lineman has had, Stretch has had. In how long? Like, who's the last guy who can come? Is it Cortez? It might be all the way back to Cortez for a guy being that dominant from an interior defensive line position. I know Jaron Reed had 10.5 sacks the 1 year here a little while back. One of the only, I think, 3 different guys in franchise history to do that from the interior. But this is different, what he's doing for them. And to have the game completely, you're staring at 28-7 in the face. Very, with absolutely everything going wrong for you, and all of a sudden you're back in the game. The momentum completely flips on Leonard Williams in the pick six. Just a great individual play by him to make that and get off to the races and take that for a 92-yard touchdown. But yeah, I mean, you did not expect the team to get to this point given where they were at coming out of the bye week with the 49ers game, and a lot of the stuff has really improved. Defensively, they look much, much better the last few weeks. Still have their warts on offense in some areas, but it's a different team than we saw a month and change ago for sure.
And Tim, they're showing why they hired McDonald, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you see what they've done over the last 3 games in that play in particular. I mean, you see a scenario which they drop their best defensive lineman into coverage and he ends up picking the ball off. I mean, they confused a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember we had the conversation after the Rams loss, and we were wondering why guys haven't been unlocked in the way that we saw Mike McDonald unlock guys in Baltimore, and have guys like Jadeveon Clowney and Kyle Van Noy and Kyle Hamilton just have these incredible impact seasons playing in that defensive system for the Ravens. And I remember us having this conversation, like, why haven't these guys been unlocked with the Seahawks? And lo and behold, Leonard Williams sure as hell been unlocked. Devin Witherspoon sure has been unlocked in the last couple of weeks. Ernest Jones, obvious, and Tyrese Knight have played really well, and I think that has allowed them to do a little bit more with some of those guys. But we're finally seeing, to your point, Puck, we're finally seeing the reasons and the thought behind, hey, this guy's a defensive whiz, this guy's a defensive genius in theory. We're seeing it come to fruition, now. Yeah. And Leonard Williams and Devin Witherspoon, obviously they're the guys that are standing out with what they're doing on the field, but those are the 2 primary examples of guys who it feels like he's found the way to unlock them and get more out of them than what we were seeing in the past, and certainly in the first half of this season.
I mean, guys, that trade, and again, I'm going to let it play out, but I think it's okay to look ahead. That trade of Ernest Jones might go down, has the possibility, minus Lynch. I don't think it's ever going to. It's not going to eclipse Marshawn Lynch. That has the makings of the second best trade he's ever made in season.
Yeah, you could put Dwayne Brown on the list too, because I think Dwayne Brown was pretty good for the time that he was here. But I think it also depends too. Are you able to keep him? Are you able to keep Ernest after this season? Because so far in the sample we've seen, he's been really good, and he's allowed your defense to do some different things that have been extremely impactful. If it's a 9-10 game stint that he's here with, great. That then you clearly improved yourselves for this season. But if you can parlay this into something moving forward where he's, your next version of Jordan Brooks or whatever playing that position, then yeah, you definitely could be talking about one of the better trades that John's ever made in season for them.
And it's kind of wild that parallels are this way, and people have pointed it out that when he was with Baltimore and they made the trade to get Roquan Smith, and all of a sudden that defense took a leap back there too. It's not the exact same circumstances, obviously, but like it's kind of funny just how much of a parallel there is between both of those trades helping a defense take this massive jump to the next level. And Ernest Jones has been terrific for them. The move to cut Tyrell Dodson and put Tyrese Knight in the starting lineup too. Like that's a ballsy play, and it seems to be working out for them as well. Julian Love is playing like an absolute star in the back end as well. Like I think it took until seeing a couple more plays yesterday for me to go, man, he's been absurdly good this year. Like I knew it, but like there's another level that he's gone to with his game that's just really impressive. So there's pieces all throughout that defense has made a massive leap. And then you talk about the scheme of it alone too. Like, as we mentioned on the Williams play, they've got 6-7 guys mugged up on the line of scrimmage to have a blitz look. And then only 4 come, and one of them's Witherspoon blitzing off the slot. and you have two defensive linemen in Reed and Williams dropping underneath, and he gets into the passing lane and he tries to throw it behind the blitzer and gets the tip and everything. It's just, it's starting to come together as a defense. You're starting to see why, I think schematically, why he was coveted as a head coach option this offseason. And now the pieces are starting to fit into place the way he wants it on that side of the ball too, with Williams, Jones, Julian Love, Devin Witherspoon, all being really key parts of that defense.
Yeah, it just I think the way that they write him, it looks like they have the disguise of it more now is starting to come to fruition. That you don't know where the pressure is coming. You're kind of, well, is it coming on this side? Is it coming on that side? Where before, and probably, right, Tim, the easiest explanation is, listen, this stuff takes time. They probably weren't going to pick it up right away. They don't play in the preseason, and they, first of all, weren't going to show everything in the preseason. So, yeah, you can run it in practice all you want, but this was going to be an issue for them. And it was going to be some growing pains. And then they just decided, right, Tim, that these two linebackers weren't cut out, so they had to make a move there. But it's going to be a defense that you've seen here in the last 2 weeks, but slowly, surely, is going to get more and more comfortable with the style of the confusion that he likes to play with.
Yeah, and if you're going to play in that way, you have to be assignment sound in everything else that you're doing. And I don't know if we saw a group that was really good at that the first handful of, and we learned nothing from those first 3 games. I mean, think back to the first 3 games. We learned absolutely nothing. It wasn't until that stretch where they started to struggle that we learned things, and those things got exposed. Those assignment errors got exposed. You have to be assignment sound in what you're doing. If all of a sudden you're going to bring, Devin Witherspoon and Rayshon Jenkins on a blitz, and you're dropping Jaron Reed and Leonard Williams into coverage, like everyone else has to have their shit together in order to make that thing work. So I think that's part of what you're seeing too, is guys are feeling more comfortable in the roles that they're in. They're playing their roles in the different schemes the way they're supposed to. And then you're allowed at that point to create as much chaos and confusion as we've seen the last couple of weeks, especially.
Curtis is going to jump back in. He was frozen. He was still talking, but the video was frozen.
And it was a great freeze.
I kind of wanted him to stay on because the audio was still there, but he was just frozen with the. And I thought that would be great. I said, listen, you don't got to jump out, but he's gonna jump back in here. As Tim Booth, Curtis Crabtree, Ground Puck Podcast, brought to you by Georgetown Brewery. What do you? Maybe I'll save the Ryan Grubb stuff for when Curtis comes back on. But 7-5 first place. It's December 2nd. We've talked about how surprised we were about this, especially where they were. In the situation heading in to the 49ers game, but through 12 games. So what does this signal? I think maybe to the fan base. What does this signal to ownership and to John Schneider with the move that they made?
Well, I think it signals a couple things. I think it signals that this group has some resolve to it. That it has some, everyone has pride in being out there and being a professional. But this group has some resolve, because it very easily could have gone really downhill in that Niners game and that last drive with Geno scoring the touchdown, and which we've talked about how that's looking back on it now, that's kind of a season turning drive and score that they had there. But this group has something about them where they weren't going to let that losing skid get out of control to the point where we're talking about a team that's then going 5-12 or 6-11, and then you're really questioning, well, does this guy have what it takes to command a locker room and get a group to rally and play for him? So I think that's a great message to send, not only to your ownership, but obviously to your fans, because you want to win, but you also want to see a team that can work through adversity, work through the issues that come up during a season, and find a way to still be successful. Yesterday's game was a damn microcosm of what we've seen this season. Like, you have all those things go against you in the first 25 minutes of that game. You're on the cusp of essentially getting blown out, and you make one play, and then all of a sudden you turn the entire tenor of the game, and then you end up finding a way to get out of there in a game that you ended up not favored at the end of the day to win. You were an underdog by the time that game kicked off. So I think there's some great messages that are sent not only to ownership and the front office that, hey, this guy might really have something here. But it's a incredibly reassuring message to the fans that, hey, this group is not going to be one that this is a coach that can get a group to rally around when things aren't going well and find ways to move forward and find success. And now we're talking about, what are their playoff percentages and what are their possibilities for, that kind of thing over the last, what are we at, 5 weeks of the season here. So it's an incredibly encouraging sign, I think, for everybody.
Yeah, Curtis, he is a real even keel kind of personality and tone to him on that sideline.
Yeah, he is. He's not going to get too wild for the most part, except for that one play last week. He's going to keep his emotions in check for the most part. So it's definitely a different, demeanor we've seen on the sideline than over the prior 14, 15 years from Pete Carroll, for sure. But it's curious to see how he handles some of the struggles that we've seen this season, and what kind of moves he's going to make to try to address some of the things. We've obviously seen them be willing to make some personnel changes and all of that, but I think you want somebody who, when things are kind of spiraling around, you can stay calm and in the moment and all of those sorts of things. And I think that's one of the real benefits for Mike as well.
Yeah, he's done through 12 games. I just think you're right, Tim. Kind of a microcosm of the season to be where they're at right now at 7-5, and the way that game, right, Curtis, unfolded yesterday for them. I mean, they could have easily. I mean, they are a better football team than New York, but they could have easily just kind of got down on themselves and just like, oh my God, it's an early game. We're on the East Coast. We've won 2 straight. They were in the division. We're feeling good about ourselves, but they didn't. And they kept battling back, and credit to that defense, because that defense allowed them to stay in that football game despite all those just, miscues from that special teams unit.
Yeah, I mean, the defense basically held them to 14 points, right?
Yeah.
In the game. So, like, that's another really strong defensive outing overall. But yeah, I mean, after the second lost fumble on a kickoff and their backs against the wall, looking at 28-7, like, there's a lot of teams that could just kind of pack it in at that point and have things really spiral on them. I mean, in some ways, it's kind of like the Bills game was a month and change ago, where like a few things went wrong and it's a 31-10 result. You could have easily ended up with a game similar to that, given the way things had gone in the first 20-25 minutes of that game, with the turnovers and the kickoff return allowed and on all of those sorts of things. So for them to, be able to make a play to flip the momentum and then stay in it and not allow another point on the board the rest of the day. I mean, just an incredible defensive performance for sure. And while the offense had its issues, when they needed it, they got it. So another credit to them on that front for sure.
You guys will appreciate this being in sports media. Like, I guess where I sit, it's more of the bombastic sports media, right? But yesterday's game was just perfect for sports media because they won the game, check, which is great. And then there's plenty to bitch about afterwards. It's because you guys know it's no fun to like win a game and like, oh, everything's great and it's fun because and that is fun to talk about. Oh, it's good, but you kind of run out of stuff, right? It's unfortunate. You need that negativity to kind of have both sides to it, right? It's why you never kind of want to be 8-8. You want to be 12-4 or 4-12. Or I guess now we're going 13-4, 4-13. Yeah. You never want to be in the middle. So that was a perfect game yesterday. You win, you're 7-5 in your first place at the same time. A fan base going, we need to fire the special teams coach and fire the offensive coordinator. And I'm like, this is great. You just can't ask for this stuff, Curtis. You know what I mean? You love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
I mean, the Chiefs are probably the holy grail, right? Because they're 9-1 or whatever, and every game they're on, it's like they're just bare knuckling it.
What's wrong with the Chiefs?
Yeah, exactly. So, and they got the 2 Super Bowls in the back pocket too. So, from the last 2 years. So, no, I mean, for sure, it can be tough at times to find angles for a really great team or a really bad team at the extremes. It can be really tough. Like, think of one of those Mariners seasons where it's 110 losses in the year or whatever. It's like, you can only ask, why do you guys suck so many times? You can only write that story so
Next
many
question.
times.
Yeah.
They have given the fan base something to talk about for sure. And I do wonder if, I like a lot about what Ryan Grubb has done from a pass game standpoint for them this year, the shifts, the motions, and those sorts of things that they brought to the table. I do wonder if they might need to bring in a run game coordinator to try to find something to help marry with his scheme at the NFL level, because like going back to the Leonard Williams conversation, you don't see guys like that outside of maybe a couple in the SEC at the college level. It's different. And when you have to scheme the game plan for those guys, and you see just about every team has somebody who's pretty strong on the defensive line, they just are not the scheme that they have, the execution of that scheme that they're running with the running game in particular is just not NFL quality right now. And I don't know how they get there with what they currently have on the table. I mean, that sequence at the goal line yesterday was abysmal.
Yeah.
And it's because of the fact that we go back to the Rams game, go back to the 49ers game where they have and 1 yardage opportunities that they spectacularly fail with running the football. Now it feels like you have to throw the ball in those circumstances because the running game has failed in so many of them previously, that there's no balance to the offense in those moments because they can't do it. They've shown that they can't do it over and over. And you do finally have Zach Charbonnet bust the one to get you the touchdown you need at the end. But that's kind of the big problem with them, the short yardage, the goal line kind of run game not being at all consistent to where everything falls on Geno Smith's shoulders. And yeah, guess what? There's going to be some mistakes in there every once in a while. There wasn't yesterday, but we've seen that in the prior weeks. So they have to get better in that area.
Let's dissect what happened on the goal line, because I mean that's a lot of the frustration coming out of that game on Sunday is going to be what happened with the goal line issues. It's been an issue all season long, this short yardage. They just can't figure out it's 3rd and 2, 4th and 1, how to get it. Whether they run the ball, it doesn't work. If they pass the ball, it doesn't work. It has been an issue. Going back to that sequence and you look at it, what was the most egregious about it? What was the biggest issue, at least analyze it? Because I would say this, that, I mean, the first play after DK, had the long reception, which you can make an argument, a better thrown ball, that's a touchdown.
Should have been a touchdown. Right. Without question. Should have been a touchdown.
I didn't like the fade pattern right away after he's clearly gassed. So I think you take an issue with that. The second down play, they handed off. So if you're like, run the ball, well, they did, and they don't really get anywhere. But the third play of that, the second play of that, I think is a well-called play. It's play action. They all bite, and Noah Fant's wide open. And he misses the throw. I mean, is that Ryan Grubb's fault, or is that Geno Smith's fault?
No, I mean, the whole sequence was infuriating, I guess, to say the least. Back to your point. So the first down play I didn't like. I would have, especially after, DK, as you said, DK runs down the field and then you're going to call a fade to him the first play. We all know how much we hate the Jeremy Bates end zone fade. Just throw it out, never call it again. I didn't like that play call. I thought the second down run to Walker was fine. I probably would have flopped those. I probably would have run Walker on first down, see if you can bust it there, and if not, okay, then you move forward with the fact you can't run the ball. The third down pass interference call in the end zone when DK got mugged.
Oh yeah, that was the third play. I mixed that up. Yeah,
it seemed like there were some options there. It looked like a couple guys flashed early in that play, but I don't remember. I just remember Geno rolling out and then throwing to DK. I don't remember if he was pressured right off the jump on that play. But then the one that sticks out to me was the throw to Fant, because he's open, and that's not on Ryan Grubb. That's a good call. Fant's open. It's a bad throw by Geno. It's one of the few times you can look at it and go, that was a really poor throw that he makes, and everyone can grouse about everything else that happened around that, but that's on Geno to make the play. It was a good play call. He was open. But then, from there, like, I didn't like what I didn't like was, if I remember correctly, on the second 3rd and goal, and then on the other 3rd and goal, and then the 4th and goal, I don't remember Ken Walker being on the field on any of those 3 plays.
On the second down one, the Fant one, he was there.
Yes, but then they went 3rd and goal Charbonnet. He didn't gain anything. They had an offside on the Jets on that play.
Right.
Then Geno throws incomplete to DK, and then
Correct.
we have the mess on the sprint out where Geno just didn't sprint out.
Yeah, he's not on the field. Yeah, Walker's not on the field for those two plays.
That's my look, the play calls were terrible because they didn't work. Okay, so we can't debate that. They at the end of the day, they didn't work, so the play calls are bad. But look at what happened on the touchdown late in the fourth quarter where Charbonnet busts it and is able to get up the middle. Walker's on the field. You get your best running back on the damn field. Even if he's not getting the ball, give the threat that he is going to get the ball, because not having him on the field instantly limits what the defense thinks is going to be coming toward them. Zach Charbonnet is not, I don't know what to think of Zach Charbonnet at this point, but Ken Walker needs to be on the field in those circumstances, even in a decoy situation. So yeah, the play calls were not great, but my issue was you didn't have your best running back on the field for any of those.
What do you think the learning curve has been for him, Curtis? Ryan Grubb, I'm speaking of.
Yeah, it's probably got to be with the running game and the leap in what the run scheme is going to require at the NFL level from college, just because of the defensive linemen you're going to face at the NFL level. You're not going to get, undersized defensive linemen moved out of the way in quite the same way as you can at the college level. Like Washington, the Seahawks are not going to face a team like, Boise State or something at the NFL level where, there's a different caliber of player there. Everybody at the NFL level is, should be there. They're quality football players, professionals, obviously. It's just different. And generally, I think the passing scheme, there's a lot to like. I mean, still, there's nothing this year that I think from the passing game with the motions and stuff, I think they're able to get the matchups they want. A lot of stuff to really like with the schemes that they kind of run there. They just need to be better. And obviously they've been hampered from the offensive line to some regard too, with their ability to run the football. It's not all scheme related, but they know what they are now at this point in the year, and they need to find some way to make it work. While we were talking here, I did a quick search for basically third and fourth down and one rushes that they've had this year. They've converted just 56.5% of those, which is fourth worst in the league. They struggle in those scenarios big time. The only teams worse than them are Miami, San Francisco, ironically, and the Raiders. So they are, I think they've had 23 plays, and so they would have converted somewhere around, I guess, 11, 12 of those, something like that. I don't see exactly where it is on the sheet here, but they just have to find a way to be two-dimensional in short yardage situations where it's not all just we need to find some way to throw it in those circumstances because we can't get any push, any schematic leverage, any kind of run success in those short yardage areas.
Guys, if they just got a little bit more out of the running game, I mean, the running game is the thing that's just bringing them down the most. I mean, they're middle of the pack in terms of total yards, at least where they rank offensively. In fact, they're one spot just below Kansas City. I think a lot of that would surprise probably a lot of people. In terms of scoring wise, I think they're 14th, I think, in scoring. It's the rushing numbers, 88 yards. I think that makes them like 29th or 28th there in the league. So they just but I think it just goes back to I don't think that it's an issue with Ryan Grubb calling plays and him being pass happy. I just think it's an issue that they are not built, Tim, right now. And again, let's give this a few weeks with this offensive line. Let's see how they react here in the next few weeks and see if they get a little bit better at it, because I think now this is going to be the line moving forward, fingers crossed. And but just they're not a good run blocking team right now. But let's see if it improves here in the next few weeks with a set group.
Yeah, and Laumea, I mean, outside of the one play where he blocked his own guy, I loved them pointing that out on the broadcast. He was okay, but again, we're talking on a scale of a group that hasn't been able to run block all season, and so our expectations are so low, I guess, that anything that seems passable is going to be acceptable at this point. there's clearly things that you can scheme your run game to a certain point. Like you can kind of come up with some designs and try and do a few things here and there to try and create opportunities for running lanes. But at the end of the day, there's only so much you can do in the run game, short of going back to like the old triple option Pony Express from SMU back in the 80s, if you really wanted to really mess with people's minds. Like their run blocking and their run game kind of is what it is at this point. And it's not, I don't think we're going to see drastic improvements because the personnel just isn't good enough to execute it the way that probably Ryan Grubb wants to execute it. And they can make tweaks here and there, and they can keep tinkering with trying to find something to unlock more consistency in it. But that's kind of the reality when you're 12 games into the season and you're rolling out a group of offensive linemen that includes Olu Oluwatimi and Satawa Laumea. I apologize if I'm hacking his name, but as your center and your right guard, like you're only going to be so good or so successful when your personnel is what it is. So people just got to kind of accept it at this point. Like the run game is going to suck. It's not going to be great. And you have an exceptional back in Ken Walker who makes a lot of stuff happen when negative plays probably should be the result, and he ends up getting a few yards here and there out of it. So yeah, the offense is going to be limited. It's just the way it is. And the fact that they're middle of the pack in scoring and in total offense is a credit to what they've been able to do in the pass game.
Next 3 games, let's wrap it up with this. Next 3 games are just going to be it's going to be fun to watch, Curtis, the next 3 in particular. And of course, they got 5 games remaining at Chicago and at LA to finish up the season. But the next 3, right? Really going to give we think they're a good football team. How good are they? Curtis, will be determined here in the next 3 at Arizona, home games against Green Bay and Minnesota. What do you think they do here in the next 3?
If you win 2 of 3, you probably win the division, right? Probably, because it shows you can beat some pretty good teams along the way to do it. But one of those probably has to be the Arizona game just to give you the leg up over a team chasing you. But yeah, I mean, I think I don't know what to expect from them over this stretch. I really don't, because the level of opponents are getting better. Obviously, we saw them beat Arizona 2 weeks ago to show that they can compete with them at the very least. But we haven't seen them play, one of these NFC North teams in a while. I don't know that more than one team from the West is going to make the playoffs, so they probably have to win the division to do it. It's going to be, we'll find out what this team is over the next 3 weeks for sure, because the defense we know is what it is now. Like, it's made some real strides, and that unit looks like it can repeat that performance week in and week out in general. Can the offense make enough incremental improvements? And to go back to touch on the rushing game there, it probably was incrementally better yesterday, even there in some regards, because they had a couple runs that did break through where they hadn't seen much of that in recent weeks. But they just have to get a little bit better there to kind of balance that offense out. And that's where the tests against Minnesota and Green Bay are going to be really good ones for sure. Arizona's defense is obviously fairly solid as well. I don't know what to expect. I mean, I really don't. It's probably going to make these next few weeks really interesting in that regard, because they can play just a disgusting game against the Jets like we saw yesterday, and then play a really good game against Arizona for the week before. Like they're a schizophrenic football team, and I don't know exactly what to expect from them at the moment.
Tim, how plausible? They got 3 more wins in the next 5. We think 10 wins is the marker for the division.
I think it's plausible. I mean, if you win in Arizona, if you can somehow get 2 of the next 3, you're going to win the division. I mean, it's as simple as that. Especially if one of those 2 is Arizona. It really comes down to that. If you're able to do that, then you're setting up week 18 in LA. Either you already got the division title in hand, or you're playing to win the division title in LA. If you can get 2 of the next 3. That's irregardless of what happens in Chicago, because you're playing on a short week the day after Christmas. It's a shitty situation. I don't know why they're getting screwed by the schedule makers this year, having to play 2 short week Thursday games, but it is what it is. So if you can figure out winning in Arizona and then I don't know. I don't know what to make of Green Bay. I think Green Bay is pretty good. I think Minnesota is really fraudulent. I don't understand how they are as good as they are this year with Sam Darnold at quarterback. If you can figure out getting one of those two and you win in Arizona, you're staring down 10 wins pretty easily. And I think 10 should get you the division title and a home playoff game. So will that happen? I got no clue. They could just as easily go 0-3 over these next 3 games. But what we've seen, the defense seems like it's got its stuff figured out. Can they win another ugly 16-6 game over the Cardinals this week? Can they grind out a 2017 win over the Packers or a 2017 win over the Vikings? Yeah, they absolutely can. And if they can do that, I think we're talking about a playoff team at that point.
There it is, another edition of the Ground Puck Seahawks podcast with Curtis Crabtree, Fox 13, Tim Booth of the Seattle Times, brought to you by Georgetown Brewery, locally owned and operated by 2 diehard Huskies, Manny and Roger. They've been pouring the best local craft beer for the past 23 years, makers of Manny's Pale Ale, Bodhisattva IPA, host of your other favorite brews. Taproom open 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., 7 days a week. Visit them at georgetownbeer.com. As you see the website, if you're watching the stream, as Homer Simpson said, beer. Now there's a temporary solution. We welcome and we're happy that Georgetown Beer Brewery brings you Tim Booth and Curtis Crabtree every single week with us. In case you came in late, entire show will be up on YouTube later, so please go there, subscribe, and like away there, and also up on Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast, and of course always up at pucksports.com. Gentlemen, we'll talk to you next week. I missed you, and you did a fine job as well. And Curtis, it's now December, so the tree fits. It's great. It's wonderful.
The tree fits for me in December. It fits for me in March. It fits for me in June.
Damn right.
It keeps
fits
on
anytime.
rocking.
All right, thanks, boys. We'll talk next week.
See you, Buck.
All right, there they are, Tim Booth and Curtis Crabtree joining us here every Monday to talk Seahawks football with the Ground Puck podcast. And again, find that on all the podcast platforms. Please, they are the best for doing it every single week here with us, and love having them on. All right, before we wrap up the daily puck drop here on Monday, December 2nd, housekeeping things here real quick. One is the Puck the Picker Pigskin Pick'em. If you are playing in this, we're getting down to the final 5 weeks of the season. In fact, remember, we're rolling through this thing all the way through the playoffs and into the Super Bowl, by the way. So this does not end the regular season. This does not even end before the regular season. This ends after the Super Bowl. So, again, all expense paid trip to Las Vegas, Circle Hotel, dinner at Barry's, all courtesy there of Troy Wentz for TroyWentz.com. First round of the March Madness is when you will go on down there. My record right now is 76-68. I'm currently 72nd in the pool right now over the hundreds that are in it. Jeff Johnson is your leader at 114-80 record. God, Jeff, Jesus, man. Smoking. Dwayne Mathis is in second place, 106-69. Jason Oldham at 102-74. Ryan Johnson has got more picks in, by the way. He's at 102-89. Matt Laporte has got 101 wins. He's in fifth place, followed by Thomas O'Hennessy in sixth place. Bryce McCoy in seventh. Jeff Shamley in eighth place. Alex Reeton in ninth place. And Jesse Burham also he's in 10th place, just behind Alex. So make sure you get all those picks in, especially starting on Thursday. Puck the Picker, Pigskin Pick'em. And a big thanks to Troy Wentz from TroyWentz.com for providing the great and wonderful extravagant prize package there for us. All right. Before we wrap it up here, we got to get to it. Hey, What the Puck? Brought to you by Restoration One of North Seattle. Your restoration company lets you avoid the stress of water, fire, and mold damage. I hope everyone's property and where you live, if it's a residential, commercial, is okay after all those storms we had. That was terrible. They're going to let you avoid all that stress. If it does hit your household or your a business, it's locally owned and operated. Make them your first call when damages affect your residential or commercial property. You can see there, you can request a service. They will do it all for you. They're 24 hours a day, 7 days a week coverage. They'll be the one-stop shop for you if anything does damage your residential or commercial property. Phone number 206-817-8917. Visit them online at restoration1.com, the North Seattle franchise. All right. To me, firing Jake Dickert is not the answer. That's just me. Do I understand the frustration from many Cougar fans out there? I do. It's a miserable way to finish the season, especially with this schedule and how it lined up for you, and this the outside shot that you could at least have the possibility of getting in the playoff, especially with everything that has transpired here in the last year plus, involving college football and involving this program. And I think therein lies a lot of the vitriol right now for Jake Dickert and the animosity, I think, to them is because of everything that's happened, being left behind, not having a home, the transfer portal and the money, and now the discrepancy between the bigger programs and then Washington State, and the way that they did falter at the end of the season against subpar opponents. I mean, they should have beat all three of those teams. It's inexcusable to lose to one of those teams. Oregon State, I would say that would be the one game. Okay, you lost to Oregon State. No excuses losing to New Mexico, and certainly no excuse losing to Wyoming at home, despite Wyoming being a better team than their record indicates. They almost, they took Boise State down to the wire. But I still think that I believe in Jake Dickert. He's a young coach. It's his first go-around. He was not going to be perfect in the first time being a head coach. No one is, especially in how he took over the team. He has faced a number of hurdles that coaches that are in their first year have never faced, ever. I mean, took over for a guy who's fired midway through the season during COVID. He finishes that season strong, by the way. And then comes the NIL and comes the transfer portal. And then the next year comes the demise of a conference. No one has ever had to face 3 years like this other than him. Being a first-year guy, he's still learning to be a first year and a first-time head coach. A lot of these head coaches on the lower divisions, D2, have been able to put their systems together, have a philosophy, build a staff when they get to a program at a Power 5 or then a Power 5 program, that they're not first-year guys who are coordinators. Most of them are. He's had to learn on the go. He's 41. I think he ultimately will be a very good head coach. I think he needs help. I think a lot of coaches need help. I think he needs veteran leadership in the coordinator positions. If he loses, he's lost one, obviously, with the firing of Jeff Schmedding today. Does he lose Ben Arbuckle? Perhaps. I think he needs to, instead of finding the up-and-coming young guy, I think he needs to surround himself with guys, as I mentioned earlier with Jim, who have been in the fire. Maybe they've been a head coach and they were fired and didn't work out, or a lower-level head coach, and now they're a coordinator. Surround yourself with guys that have been coaches before to lean on them to give you advice and to help you out. His first 3+ years on the job, because remember, he comes in, midway through in 21, and, by the way, leads them to a 3-3 mark, 3-1 in the conference. Had a very good game down in Eugene before it got away late. They hammered Arizona at home. They destroyed Washington in the Apple Cup, and I know Washington was going through a whole bunch of their stuff they were going through, but they handled them, and they won the Apple Cup. They ended up losing the Sun Bowl that year. That was the whole Jaden DeLora debacle. I didn't even mention that. He's visiting team. He's visiting Arizona at the time in Jed Fish, and then lying about it and saying he's stuck in Hawaii, but he wasn't. He was in Tucson meeting with them. So he had to deal with all that. Jaden DeLora taps out at halftime. I can't even remember the quarterback they went with. It was the walk-on kid. They had to go with him, and they ended up losing. You got to also remember in that bowl game, you got 3 veterans that elected not to play, including Max Borghi, Abe Lucas, Jalen Watson, all of that. He's 23-20 in his tenure there at Washington State, in his 3+ years there. If you compare that with the 2 other coaches who have had great success there, Mike Price and Mike Leach, it's leaps and bounds better than them. Now, I'm going to acknowledge when Mike Leach took over was much more difficult than what Jake Dickert had to take over in different circumstances. I mean, Mike Leach is replacing Paul Wolf, who was, undoubtedly the worst coach that program has ever had. But Mike Leach was 12-25 in his first 3 years. And there were doubts about him. Mike Price was 13-20. 2022 brought a whole new set of problems and issues with the NIL. He gets Cam Ward, which then in turn he gets the offense coordinator to come along with him. They obviously didn't mesh. It wasn't good. They had a bad 3-game stretch in 2022, October 8th through the 27th. But they lost 2 of those 3 losses were to ranked teams. One was at USC, and the other was at home to the 14th ranked Utes, and they lost by 4. Sandwiched in between that was a loss to Oregon State and Corvallis. Jonathan Smith. By the way, that Oregon State team finished 10-3, and they ranked 17th. So there's this notion that there's all these collapses every year with him. I don't call 2022 a collapse at all. You go back to 23 in what they did in that season, in the stretch that they had of those games in which they kind of fell apart in 23. I mean, the wheels did come off in 23. I think they get off to a 4-0 start. I think the 2 games that I would say were inexcusable were Stanford and Cal during that. Remember, they played better in that Apple Cup against Washington, goes on to play the national title game. And you can make an argument they should have won the game. They played at times better than Washington. I think defensively that year they were probably the best defensive game plan that they had against Washington. I think Washington would acknowledge that, other than, obviously what Michigan did in the national title game. I would say, Coug fans, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Relax. Let's see what the offseason has. One thing you got to give him credit for, and his staff, they did not have a lot of turnover this last year. Will it be the same this year? I don't know. We'll see. It all depends on the quarterback, for sure. If Ben Arbuckle does leave, I think personally he's got to go in a different direction of finding a coordinator that is honestly going to bring a little bit more balance to the offense. He's got to find that. You can still have an explosive offense, but you've got to find it where we're getting a little bit closer to 60, 40, 55, 45. They've got to be better at running the ball. They just have to be. And he's got to find an identity and a coordinator that wants to do that if Arbuckle does leave. And it looks like Arbuckle will leave for another job. And, I think he'll be okay. I think he's a great face of the program. He's what is right to me. Again, many of you won't agree, and that's fine. It's okay. To me, he's what is right about college football and the way he leads that program in that school. We'll find out. A lot of changes. If you can weather the storm here for a couple of years, and then with how much this landscape will change, they'll be okay. But I don't know if that will be the biggest question, whether or not they can navigate that storm here in the next year or 2. All right. That's it for Hey, What the Puck. It's brought to you by Restoration One in North Seattle. Your restoration company lets you avoid the stress of water, fire, and mold damage with their property restoration services. Locally owned and operated. Make them your first call when those damages do affect your residential or commercial property. 206-817-8917. Visit them online at restoration1.com, the North Seattle franchise. All right. Appreciate it. Everything will be up later on the podcast and on YouTube. When you're at YouTube, please subscribe there. Leave comments. Also on Apple and Spotify, please comment. It does help, please. And then also all of the content, always, every show up at pucksports.com. Reminder, please sign up for the Pucks Posse community membership. We are going to be adding new features coming shortly, and hopefully new features that will be weekly, that will be just exclusive to Pucks Posse community membership. So please sign up there. That QR code on your screen will take you there. We've got the debut of Dynamic Duos coming up in January, where, again, we're going to interview 2 people in the sports community with Seattle ties, athletes, broadcasters that are synonymous with one another. So that first episode coming in January. Our Mariners Diamond Table, which is great, 2+ hours with Divish and Adam Jude and Jim Duquette, Bill Kruger, Brad Adam, is wonderful. If you haven't watched or listened to it, just go sign up. You can sign up for a month, listen to it, and that's it. $5 a month. Sign up for the year. You're going to get a discount, just $54. It's well worth it. I promise you. I'm not just saying that. Well, I'm saying that a little bit. But Pucks Posse community membership. Go sign up. A one-stop click. You just go to pucksports.com, and at the top of the webpage, it will take you right there. All right, that's it for a Monday edition, a long one. We'll talk to you tomorrow on a Tuesday edition, by the way. Include a visit with Rob Staten of SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Also, John Canzano is getting closer to wrapping up the college football season. We'll get the latest with Canzano coming up tomorrow. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. As always, we promise to be better.
no shoes, no dice.
Would anybody like to smoke some pot?
Yeah.
I was born to love you. I was born to lick your face. I was born to rub you. But you were born to rub me first.
What do you need my address for? We'd like to send out a mailer.
Mother of mercy, I don't speak Japanese!